tea. I need a glass of water, bottled water.
And good morning, inspired family. How are you guys this morning? We just want to welcome you to today's podcast today. We are here with Miss Patrice Manning. Denny, okay, I'm
Yeah.
Manning. And again with Miss Tammy Hines Williams this morning. And we're going to be speaking about Your Children Are Crying. Are you listening? Amen. And it was an awesome women's conference that we had a month ago.
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, time is flying.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hey. But yeah, so she was one of the speakers that God blessed us to hear from. So today we want to elaborate a little bit more and go a little bit further. So why don't you go ahead? Who can introduce you better than you introducing yourself, girl?
All right. Well, my name is Patrice Denny. I'm from Parents and Children Connecting Together, or PACT for short. And basically, what we talk about at PACT is we help parents help themselves, help their children, and we also help children. We help them to have better social skills. We help them with behavior needs, and we help parents mostly connect with their children to understand what is going on if my child is having a behavior or academic problem. What can I do to better connect with my child if they're lost? And so I started PACT because as a teacher, I saw a lot of disparities with our youth. As I was teaching, kids would not understand what was going on in the classroom. Sometimes they would come to school hungry or come to school tired, or come to school angry. And trying to work with a child when they are having something going on with them, if they're having a traumatic experience, it's really hard for a teacher to stop and not neglect their own class to deal with each individual child. And I said, hey, there has to be something that I can do about this. And so I found something called parent coaching. And what it does, it helps the parents connect to the child in a way that the child feels safe enough to get out their emotions, to feel their feelings, and to be a better person and have the potential that they need to thrive. And so I decided I want to change from teaching and do that.
Well, to God be the glory for the change. Hey, I'm glad.
That sounds really good, because right now it's really needed, especially with so much going on in the world today. And schools can't be the everything to, to each individual child right now, because they need help. And if you got an angry child taken away from the other children, it's time consuming.
And I guess it's challenging as well to try to contain that child in that, and then you have others that have other issues that are going on that are affecting their learning ability in the classroom. I think it was last weekend, Pastor and I were out, and I met this lady. I can't remember her name right now, but she's been a teacher for 30 years, and she's getting ready to retire because of how the classrooms are nowadays, and being in the last days with the transgender and issues that are at home. She said her most challenging time was during the virtual learning. During the COVID thing, she said that was the most traumatic experience even for her as a teacher. So I want to lift the teachers up and go Jesus for the teachers that have to endure those type of things. But she was saying how it was kind of embarrassing for the kids to see the type of conditions in the background that they come from, and you got your friends that was yeah.
thought about that.
When she said it, that really blew my mind because I never thought about that either. Having the parents in the background yelling at the other kids. So yeah, I mean, this
It was that hybrid learning was very tough on the teachers. So can you imagine being in a classroom? Your kids are traumatized just from not being able to connect with their other kids. The children are traumatized because maybe some abuse is going on at home, maybe some neglect is going on at home, and so then a teacher is taking a peek into their world, and then they're supposed to still sit, on the computer.
All
Can
of
you?
the noise in the background, and I don't mean just the noise from the other children or parents. I'm talking about the noise from there because as they trying to learn on the computer in their head, everything is going off up in there. I wish they'd be quiet. I wish they couldn't see this. My mother, I wish she would stop and go. So, all those other little conversations going on up in here and trying to learn and everything. That had to be, real hard on them at that point.
Right.
yeah, I want to agree with my brother-in-law. Brother-in-law, he was like, yeah, he said they had the teachers that we had in school. When they took the paddling out of school, I mean, I remember them red paddles.
You mean the ones with the holes in
That one too. Or when they used to take the rulers and pat it in the hand,
with the
not.
metal one?
But those teachers back then, and not saying we don't have them now today, but I think they were more in tune a little bit more because now the kids are, the teachers are getting a little discouraged in what they're doing.
Well, I'm not going to say I agree or disagree with
Right,
that.
right.
But what I really think is we have come a long way from not understanding each other.
Okay.
I
Okay. I
think
can agree with
parents
that.
don't understand children. I think teachers don't understand children, and I think children don't understand themselves. And so, with all of
Okay.
that misunderstanding happening, then the classroom is bound to have some,
But that's the social melting pot for everything coming from you have 30 something children in a classroom. So that's 30 different personalities, including administrations and the other members of schools, down to the janitors, the people who serve lunch. So you got all of those different personalities in the classroom with their own issues. And right now, the way the system has changed since COVID. It's so much the teachers have to do to prepare for school. They don't even have a moment to. They got to stay on target class. So whatever going on, it doesn't even know. It used to be our teachers used to step outside with us and talk with us. That's not there no more.
Mhm.
You know,
You're right.
the
You're right.
computers are in the classroom, so they have distractions. The telephones the kids have in there is distractions. So, with all those many different distractions, and the learning situations have changed. No, I don't. I'm. I can. I can see how it's so messed up for not being able to talk with our children because you don't know which way to talk and who to talk and how to talk with them.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit about what's happening with our youth. Our youth are starting to commit suicide.
Yes.
At a
Yes.
high rate.
That at a very rate,
Yes.
especially our African American youth, the suicide rate has increased exponentially. And so, what is happening with our youth are they having suicidal ideation, which is they're just thinking about committing suicide. They are attempting actual suicide, and they are actually committing suicide. And so, that is very troublesome to me. About 3 years ago, a student at my school she went on to middle school and she actually went through with she was having suicidal ideation, and so she was threatening her parents often that she wanted to kill herself, and she actually did.
And
Wow.
the parents kind of, I'm not taking nothing away from them, but I'm pretty sure not understanding. They kept going, oh, she'll get over it, or you'll get by with it, or it won't last, or it's not real. Those kind of words and phrases to a child who feels that way. Being a parent of two children who have attempted suicide in past. At first it was like, boy, if you go sit down somewhere, now it's more so, okay, let me take this more serious now because of how much lack of information back then compared to all information now to find out, like your expertise in this. You are talking about it, and parents can talk. Now I can hear when my grandchildren say, I don't feel good about this, or I feel like doing this, or something like that. You're right.
Go ahead. I want to thank God for the heart that He gave you, because that's an anointing behind that.
Amen.
That is
Amen.
an anointing.
I do believe that God called me to this work. Like I said, I would see kids just so troubled. And I do believe in the past when we had a troubled child, our answer was to punish them,
Yes.
to put them in the corner, to spank them,
Or to belittle them.
to
with it.
belittle them. That's
Right,
right.
right.
And so I think there was a breakdown in communication, and it's been happening over time. And I think that we just didn't understand how the brain works, how children think, and we thought that children need to just stay in their place. I know when I was growing up, that's what my grandmother told me. My
Come on
grandmother
now.
said,
Come
this
on.
is the place for the grown-ups, and y'all kids stay over there. At
Or
Thanksgiving.
Savior's lie. Get out of grown folks' business.
Yes, or what goes on in this house
Stays in the house.
and all that kind of stuff we thought was proper. We thought that, oh well, we grew up better because our parents kept us in our place. What our parents really did was keep us in fear. Fear
Wow.
and punishment is really not the proper way to help your child to thrive. And so now we see all of these kids that are angry and fighting teachers and violent. And we're like, well, things are different now, and that's why the kids are acting that way. No, what is happening is our schools, our homes have continued to do things the way that they have done them for so long that we think that that's working. Well, it's not working. And that's why things are becoming so violent, so crazy, because we have put a lid on trauma. In the Black community that we don't want to talk about it. We're ashamed of it.
Right.
We think that we can just press through, but we can't, because why are these rates of our kids committing suicide going up?
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit about the way we as adults and parents communicate. I want to talk about parent communication.
Okay, I should have got my pen and paper because this is really for me because of trying to understand one of my grandbabies. She's not special in saying it in derogatory way, but she's different, which is a compliment I've come to learn. When we say to people, you're different. So I need to. Girl, give me something. I got my plate. Come on, ready.
Okay. So I want to talk about how we've communicated in the past, and a lot of this, if you think about it, comes from us having to be strong, us having to hide our trauma, us having to. And when I say us, I mean Black women. I mean our culture has taught us to hold things inside, not to share our feelings, and to suppress if we are angry, upset. And so what happens when we do that? It has to come out somewhere.
Some way.
And so what we do is we generationally pass on trauma.
Wow.
Because Pastor V says this often, and I want to thank Pastor V because Pastor V introduced me to Pastor D. She is the one who gave me this opportunity to speak to you guys today. And Pastor V often says, trauma not dealt with is trauma passed on. And so if we don't deal with our trauma, just think about it. Us as African Americans, we have dealt with trauma since we came to this country. We were brought here in a traumatic situation.
I was going to say it started before we even hit
Yes.
the shores.
Yes. And so we were told, because we were basically animals or cattle, that we didn't have any feelings and that we didn't need to show anything. We had to hold it in. And if we showed it, then we would get punished. So We grew up believing that punishment was necessary to keep each other in place.
I want to address one of the chats from Bridget Hughes Isuku. She says that I think this is a different generation, and yes, it starts with communication. I still am a firm believer in how I was raised. I'm blessed my mother talks to us.
Great, great. I'm glad that your mom did open up communication with you, but we got to think about how our communication sounds.
Oh, what it looked like,
Okay,
right?
what does it look like? Let me give you some parent communication that we often hear in the Black home. Speak when spoken to. Be quiet before I give you something to cry about. Not now. Can't you see I'm busy? Fix your voice. You're just like, and you can just add
Fill in the
on
words.
whoever you want to add on to that. Look at me when I'm talking to you. I'm the grown up, you're the child. So stay in your place.
Don't be disrespectful.
I'm not one of your little friends.
Oh my God, did you really go down that road? You really just threw that rock at me, literally. Literally, those are my communication.
That's your communication style.
Yes, yes.
And we believe that that's the proper communication style.
Right.
That we should put children in their place so that they can become these obedient, I don't want to even say this, soldier-like human beings, because if you stay in your place and you stay a child, then you're going to grow up and be prosperous.
Well, that's how, like you said, when we came on the shores with this, that's how they trained us. And because we was trained that way, it remained in effect. Because they thought, well, if master beat me, then I'm this way. Then if I do that to my children, they will be like that, and we will get through this the best way we know how. It was more so for survivor's sake than it was.
Oh my God, that is
Saying
and that's where that comes in at. And with that being said, the way, like I say, the way we think now is still that it's survivor's sake. And be it right or wrong, that's all they knew at that time. And they passed it on.
Mhm.
And because they passed it on, they forget the parents was also angry without power, without words. So they only doing what it was done to them, and then their children's children are doing it.
Okay, we got a question and we have another statement. I want to go to the one from Melinda May. She said that it's exactly, we need to let, what did she say exactly? We're not giving our kids a voice to communicate.
That's right. We are actually stealing our children's voices.
Wow.
Our voice was
Wow.
stolen, and we continue
Wow.
to steal
And I know,
voices.
I don't mean to cut you off like that, but it's not just stealing the communication.
Wow.
We don't honor the way they talk.
We don't.
Oh
and
my
I'm going to
God.
talk about
Oh
that.
my God.
I'm going to talk
Okay,
about
I'm going
that.
to address one more. Let's see, we got another one here from Kimberly Sanders. What about other races? As an educator, how has trauma affected their cultures?
I would think, well, the thing is, and you guys can look this up, there's a study called ACEs. And ACEs is a study that's over 20 years old, where they actually started this study with people who were obese. And this was primarily, studies are done with communities that are not our culture. So they did this study because the people who were obese kept returning back to obesity, even though they would try different things, different mechanisms, exercise or eating correctly or training their brain to, want the proper foods. They tried all different types of methods to help these people lose weight. And the people would be successful at losing weight, but then they put the weight back on. So this doctor wanted to find out, why does this person keep resorting back to eating? What the person was doing was they were using eating as a calming mechanism, as a mechanism to deal with their trauma, as a mechanism to deal with their pain. And so they decided to say, hey, after interviewing all of these, I think they started out interviewing about 100 people, and they were Caucasian. They were, in the middle age range. I think about 18 to 30, something like that. And they, and I may not have all the facts correct, but they did the study and they asked them certain questions, and they found out they had some things in common. That all of these people who were continuing to gain the weight back had in their childhood past trauma. They had things like alcoholism in their family. They had abuse in their family. Their family members, their parents were divorced. They were raised by a single parent. They had some neglect going on. And so they had these three criteria that all of these participants fell in, and they made up a 10 questions in a questionnaire, and they started questioning all of them and found out that if these people had 5 or 6 of these things checked off on this checklist, then this was what was causing them to resort to unhealthy eating habits, or just unhealthy habits, period. It could be they turn to alcoholism, they turn to substance abuse,
Right.
they turn to some type of thing to suppress all the hurt, the anger, the pain that had been going on in their lives. And so what they came to understand was, if any child is going through this before the age of 18, they're more likely to resort to unhealthy habits in their adulthood.
Wow.
And so basically, ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And we've all had them. I'm a product of divorce. I'm a product of an alcoholic father, grandfather. My mom and all her siblings were all abused. I mean, so all of this stuff is in our families. So what are we going to resort to deal with that? And then if we're told as a people that we have to suppress our anger, we have to suppress our hurt, that we can't share. That's crazy Lady Jane. Don't talk to her over there. You don't go to a psychiatrist. You don't get any help. You just try to deal with it. What are you going to do?
Or going to deal with it shows a sign of weakness. And that's how, people look at it is, well, if I go to a therapist or seek help, I'm weak. And when it was hitting, as we sit here, if we wasn't doing this would be considered a form of gossip. Because when we get together, the only thing we do is talking about our problems. And because of that, people say we gossip, and that's what it looks to the outside. But when we really talking about what's going on, we really helping one another.
That's right.
Because we have put labels on certain things. We don't get the help that we need, or we are not taken serious. And our children are the main ones. They grow up with that, and then they continue on what we taught them. And it's unfair to them, but that's what it would look like if people didn't see these mics. They would say, oh, they just sitting up there gossiping. They don't really know what they're talking about. That don't really happen. They just using that as an excuse to,
That's right.
Yeah, and we have to understand our children, they are what they see. They are very much sponges. And just to sit here right now and hear all of this just makes me want to be better for my grandbabies, because she act like you. Well, that's scary. Because I know how I am. And so now being educated and brought up in information, I'm really glad for the informational side that God or this generation through technology. We can say it's bad, but without it, we would not have as much information as we have right now. So thank you again for what you do. So she was talking about the stilling the voices, and you were going to address that. Or am I getting ahead of things?
No. Let's continue to talk about that, because we are talking about parent communication, and the person wanted to address, what happens in other races. Well, other races seek therapy. We're afraid of therapy. We won't say therapy is cool. God cares about our mental health. And that's our mantra. By the way, just want to do a little plug. May is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Wow.
And
It
so
is.
we are
Wow.
going to be doing something
Every
at
day.
our church on mental awareness.
And the name of your church? Shout out.
It's Family Life International Ministries
Hey.
with Bishop Al Blue, Pastor Baron Blue, and
Woo-hoo.
our lead pastor, Pastor Austin Blue.
Amen.
And so we are not afraid of talking about mental health. We want to talk about that unhealthy communication that goes on in our families that we've closed the door on, or that we've called gossip. Lectures is unhealthy communication. Blaming.
Lectures.
Yeah,
Lectures.
when
When
we sit there
you
and
sit
hold-
there and lecture your child,
Oh my
that is
God.
actually unhealthy communication. First of all, a child's attention span is only as long as their age. So if I'm 7, I can only sit there and listen to you for 7 minutes.
It's that.
If that.
And you're not
If I-
lying. Oh my
Listen, the
God.
ACEs study shows that if you are traumatized, your brain actually stops developing.
And the thing about it, then they put that title on there, that ADHD, because the child can't sit there and listen for a long period of time. But that's how the attention span is. You're right.
They can't
they
do
can't.
it. And if you have trauma compiled onto how you're developing as a child, then you develop even slower than a normal child would.
Wow.
So lectures are not good. Labeling, oh, you're so smart. That's a label.
So what
You're
are we
so
supposed to
dumb.
say?
Okay. Blaming. Well, if
She
you
gonna
wouldn't
get
have
back
did
at
that,
you.
I don't get that with you. Blaming is actually unhealthy communication. If you wouldn't have did that, this wouldn't happen. Okay. Shaming. You always blank, blank, blank. Oh, let me get back to it.
Okay, thank you, Michaela, for letting us know that we're in the right place.
All right. Let's talk about some more unhealthy communication. Yelling.
But I talk loud anyway.
Okay.
There's a difference between talking loud
Loud
and
and yelling. Yelling is not just your pitch, but it's also your tone. Are you frowning and looking at your kid in a mean way?
Yes, very
Or,
cross-eyed,
you know,
like
yes,
this.
yes,
This is
that
the look.
yelling.
Or you get that look, you know.
Mhm.
Mhm.
What about making assumptions or interruptions? That is
Wow.
actually negative communication to your child. If you cut them off in the middle of what they're saying, or you assume they did something for a certain reason,
Bad girl. Bad girl.
that is actually unhealthy communication. And why do y'all think we resort to this type of communication?
Because that's how I was communicated to.
Like you said, in the past, it was, you got to stay in place. We do it because that's the way we were communicating to. We do it because we're actually angry as a child. We're unsure about, how we're actually feeling at the moment that something happened. Or maybe we want to fix the situation. We think we can fix.
But that's what we all do. It's not just we do that with our friends and family. As soon as we hear a problem, we instantly jumping in trying to fix the problem instead of just listening.
Oh, I'm so glad that you said that. We don't take a moment to just listen to our kids. We want to fix, we want to change their behavior, and save our kids. I am guilty of that. I want to save my kids from doing something wrong, so I'll give them a lecture or I'll blame them or whatever those ways of unhealthy communication, just because I think I can save them from
And
getting
that
hurt.
was the one thing I think, not what's needed, but what I think should be, or I think how you should act, or I think how you should behave is always what I think, because we're supposed to be that expert as a parent. And it doesn't come with no paperwork, no
I
instructions.
know, and they said that in the Bad Mom movie, that Bad Moms and how do you say it, Michaela Kunis, however you say her name, please forgive me. But she was like, if you got this mom thing down pat, then send me the book,
Right.
because
And we don't have it down pat. I'm not here to shame or blame parents. I'm just here to open up the communication that parents should have with their kids and just make them aware and give them some information and some education on we can actually do things differently.
Amen. I want to address two of the chats. I think, okay, Casey, can you put Bridget back up for a minute? Uh, Bridget says, this is very interesting. I'm really torn with what's being said. They, there are some good points. I think this is a case by case issue.
It could be, but I'm gonna we're gonna move along a little bit more because we have to realize that we don't want to silence our kids' voices. They do have opinions, they do have thoughts, but we have to help them get to what do they believe about themselves? What do they feel in a particular situation? If they're angry, they're hurt, they're sad, they're having some misunderstanding about something. But if we interpret their feelings, their thoughts, their needs to them for them, then we're taking away their voice.
And
Oh,
we're
wow,
not
that makes
giving
a
them
lot
a
of
chance
sense
to
too.
explore and grow on their own and to understand. And I tell them now, even we are allowed to make mistakes because those are the ways you find out if it's right or wrong.
That's right.
Because there's no, like she said, it goes case by case. There is no right or way. So what you're saying might not apply for another child or the parent. It's based on how they receive it and how we, put it out there.
That's right. And the thing is, if you had healthy communication when you were growing up, then you probably do teach your kids healthy communication styles. If you let your kids have a voice, if you let them share their feelings, then I might not be talking to you. But 9 times out of 10 in a Black home, and I hate to say this, because Black parents want to say, well, I got beat and I got this and that done to me, and I turned out fine. Did you really?
No, I'm not
I
fine.
just saw a comedian just saying that I used to get a whooping and I turned out to fine. Then we should continue on doing that today. They won't be, broken.
Right. And I'm not against discipline, because a lot of people get upset when you talk about conscious parenting or when you talk about gentle parenting, or there are a lot of different phrases. What I like to call it is connection. Okay.
It's
If you
good. It's a good word.
connect to your child and you understand and have empathy for whatever they are going through, and you want to listen to them and you let them have a voice, then you are teaching them actually how to thrive. You're teaching them how to be resilient. Kids have to learn from their mistakes. So you actually can't save them. You have to let them make mistakes. And sometimes we're so gung ho on beating it out of the child and punishing the child. Punishment actually means we're instilling fear.
But that still goes back to where it all began, that because that's the way it was given. And even today we still practice that because it was done to them, but over the millenniums, they haven't learned anything different. Like it says in Ecclesiastes, nothing new under the sun.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, we have to do something different because our kids are dying.
Mhm.
They're dying and they're crying
That
out,
is so
and they
true.
want to be understood, and we just keep on blaming it on them. The way a child turns out starts somewhere.
And it
And
starts at home.
It does start at
It
home.
starts at home. And Miss Michaela, what did she have to say? She said it's hard when it's a learned behavior and it's difficult to change. Yeah, it's a process because it took us a process to get there, And even like my thing is like me and boys.
Mhm.
We really have to know how to have a great communication with boys, and I'm not just singling them out, due to the fact that we are the first women that they come in contact
Right,
with.
right.
So will they pick the same woman and holler and scream and think, "Dad, she's good," because why? That's what we saw, and it all, like you said, starts in the home.
That's
So
right.
yeah, so come on, finish.
Let's talk about child development and communication. And I think this will help us understand why we need to communicate with our kids differently. Children, no matter what age, can't always control their reactions, their emotions, their feelings to any given situation, because a child's brain development is different than an adult's brain development. Okay, so I want us to understand how a child's brain actually develops. The development and maturation of the prefrontal cortex And so I'm going to talk about front brain thinking for a minute. The frontal brain or the prefrontal cortex is the most developed state of the brain. Okay. This is how executive function goes. This is where our higher order thinking takes place. This is where we're able to reason and rationalize and make good decisions. Okay. That is the part of the brain that is developed at 30 and beyond.
Wow. Developed.
Developed.
Because it doesn't fully develop to after 25.
That's right. You remember that fact that I gave you? The brain starts
See, I
developing
was
in the back brain first.
So it goes from the back to the front.
Yes. So the back brain is in charge of all your emotions.
the primitive part
Your
of it.
primitive parts. You're having fun and you feeling everything. So if you're feeling sad, you're gonna be in that for a minute. If you're feeling happy, you're gonna be in that for a minute as a child. That's why kids like to play. And that's why they're always running around and being active. And that's why your kid can tear up their room, but they can't clean up their room. Think about it. When you lecture your kid, I showed you how to make this bed, and they don't know how to make it the next day or the next day or the next day after you show them 100 times how to do something, or why you have to keep repeating yourself, or why a teacher has to keep teaching their kids how to line up in the straight line. The reason why is because their brain is not developed up here yet.
So they still functioning on
From
the
the
back.
They stay functioning until 25. And if they've had trauma, it's even later.
And because whatever the
Wow.
trauma kicks in,
Wow.
that's where the child starts developing at.
That's correct.
But that's what because they say in recovery that once the first time you pick up and you continue on using, that's where you cut off at that age.
That's right.
So when that person start using, say at 14, and here they are, a 34-year-old person, they still here, even though their physical body is still in play.
That's right. So when we look at somebody who has gone through something when they were a child, and I'm just going to throw this one out here. Let's just say you were a 12-year-old girl and you got raped.
Yeah.
Okay. And that trauma happened for you. Until you heal from that trauma, you're still 12. So you can be 22, you could be 32, and you're still having flashes and triggers.
And it
and
doesn't
different
matter
things
what
happen
age it
to
is,
you.
it's still that part. And I say this personally because being raped at an early age by a family member, even at 60 plus, that still pops up. It doesn't go away. It's just learning new ways and means on how to do it. And that's what you're saying with our children. We know the trauma exists. It will stay in play. It's teaching them how to talk about it and work their way through it, because they're going to still have to know how to do it as they get older.
That's right. And so if we deal with the traumatic situations that happen with our children and we give them the freedom and the room to talk about it, they can bounce back. They can be resilient. But what we often do as parents is we squash it. We don't want to talk about it. Like I said, what goes on in the house stays in the house. Don't put your business out there. And so a child may grow up thinking that they need to hold that thing that has happened to them, that experience that's happened to them in. It could be something small that we don't think is that traumatic, but to them, a kid getting teased at school could be very traumatic to them. And if they come home and they tell mom, well, everybody's talking about me, and you just say, well, they're just jealous. You're actually kind of just brushing it
Or
off.
you blame them.
Yeah. Well, if you were paying attention in school, you wouldn't notice what those other kids were saying.
Okay, so help me out. What would be a proper response?
So a proper response. So what I want to talk to y'all about is something called reflective listening. When your kids come home at school and you actually say, how was your day? Sit there and listen to them tell you about their day. Maybe they don't want to talk about math, but maybe they want to talk about, what happened with their friendships. You have to give room without interruption on listening. We have to practice listening to our kids, and we have to make a and develop a safe place for them to come home to. While they're sitting there having their after school snack, don't be, now you need to go start doing your homework. Now you need to do this, and this. You gotta take your bath and brush your teeth and let's just move on to the next day. No, leave that. Play a game. Do something fun where your kids can interact with you and they will feel safe enough to communicate to you about whatever it is. It could be something happy that they want to talk about, but if they're constantly getting shut down and they have to stay in a routine and they don't get to share when they're even feeling happy, what's going to happen when they're feeling sad, when they're feeling hurt, when they're feeling discouraged?
So I have a question. Then the parent needs to be taught that first, because like we said, when the child comes home and want to talk about their day or something happened, the parent squashes down because they don't know different no better, because that's how they was raised. So how do you get the parent to be able to do what you're suggesting?
So that's where parent coaching comes in. They may need to not go to a therapist, but just go to a coach. A coach teaches them how to communicate better with their children, teaches them those reflecting skills, active listening, self-reflection on themselves, how to do some self-care, how to do some different things where you will have that moment to breathe, to concentrate and be alone and take care of yourself, so that when it's time for you to listen to your child, you're attentive, you're calm, and you're conscious of what they need and how to listen to them and how to understand.
So what's the difference between parent coaching and therapy?
So the difference between a therapist is primarily going to deal with your past and your trauma, and they're going to teach you how to deal with that. Whereas a coach will set a goal, an intention, and teach you how to go forward.
Okay.
With something.
Because I think a lot of parents would really.
Yeah, I think they taught us that in the class, is that the therapist deals with the past and the coach brings you to your future.
Right.
Yeah, they spoke
Right.
about that. Okay, Michaela, you had a question. What did she have on there? Michaela asks, isn't possible to incorporate, am I reading it right?
Yeah.
Incorporate healthy communication and still have structure?
It definitely is, because healthy communication skills require structure. So again, I want to go back to some people who are thinking that I'm saying no to discipline. I am not saying no to discipline. I am saying no to punishment. There's a difference. Okay, discipline. The word discipline actually comes from the root word disciple. So think about Jesus.
Come on
Jesus
now.
had disciples. Disciples followed a teacher. So Jesus was a teacher. He taught his disciples what to do because he was going to one day leave, right? Well, that's what we want to do. As parents, we want to disciple our children, because one day we're going to leave and they're going to get married and they're going to want to go out. So discipline actually means to guide, to instruct. But what we do is we want to do punishment. We think they are synonymous. So punishment means to shame, to make someone fear you, to control. And we don't want to control our children, because one day they're not going to be with us and they need to know how to self-regulate and control their own selves and their own lives. But they will not learn how to self-regulate because their brain is not capable of doing that. I want to go back to brain development. Okay. A kid loves to stay in a stage of play. So they are not able to actually self-regulate, control themselves. But they can be taught how to. But that starts with you controlling yourself.
My God.
If you don't control yourself, how is your child going to learn how to control themselves? If you're always yelling and blaming and hollering and cursing, then that's what the child is actually learning. That the way I deal with pain, the way I deal with being upset, is to punish, yell, scream, fight, hit.
Wow.
I am teaching my child that that's how I control myself. No, you need to teach your child something different. You need to teach them that I can have a conversation with you and I can still discipline you. I'm not saying take away consequences. I am not saying take away discipline. You do need to still have a structured environment. In fact, kids crave it, because kids actually want structure because it helps them regulate themselves. They don't know how to do it.
So is that why they want to call it a high case of ADHD or ADD? Because it's in proper communication, or is it part of the brain function?
So ADD, ADHD, and any other disorder is something that is improper brain functioning. A child's brain does stay back here, but if you have ADHD, ODD, ADD, any other type of disorder, your brain is even more likely to not develop properly. So you will not have control over your hypersensitivity. You might not have control over how distracted you are. So that is just some other type of mechanism taking place in your brain
Wow.
that helps you not focus. Okay, that's what ADD is, attention deficit disorder. That means you cannot focus correctly. ADHD means you're hyperactive, so you can't control your ripples. It all is a brain dysfunction. But a kid already wants to play all the time. A kid already wants to spin around. And that's why they're trying to do different things in the classroom, like music and have the cell phones and have the computers and stuff like that, because they're only going to pay attention to you sitting there doing a lecture for 5 minutes.
And kids learn more so by touching.
And doing
And
than
doing.
they do by
Okay.
you sitting there.
My God, you just gave me something.
So, and for really women more able to do multitasking more so because we so busy, because our head is just moving, and we are so moving, it's hard for us to pull it in, and that's the disabling function too, because you're so busy way over here, you can't function as what's going on.
Okay, so I got an example. So first say, I got one that just turned flips all through the house.
Mhm.
Girl, can you just stop flipping and walk, please? Okay, so
What do you do?
what I did one time, I said, come here, let's sit over here. Come on, here, let's work out. So I redirected that energy that she was using to flip. And then I started talking to her about this is how you need to do your chores. So I found a way to get in, but it was kind of like Jesus or anybody. You have to meet, I would say for me, as I'm listening to you, giving me things, is that I would have to meet them where they are on that level.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And what we want to do is we want to keep calling our kids to be more responsible, keep calling our kids to behave. Okay. A child is a child. So they are going to misbehave because they have not learned how to behave yet. Learning how to behave does not happen in a nutshell. It does not happen instantaneously. It is developed over time. But we don't want to give our kids time to develop. We want them to be obedient and listen to what we have to say right now. We're asking them to actually be adults, and they're not capable of doing that.
Wow.
So what you did was you met your child where they are, put them in an activity. So if they come home and they're ready to release all that energy because they already been sitting at a desk all day.
Right.
They only have 15 minutes of recess.
Right.
They only get to talk to their friends for another 20 minutes at lunchtime. Right. So they get 30 minutes or 40 minutes to actually be themselves for out of a 6 or 7 hour day. And then when they come home from school, we tell them to go sit down somewhere.
They go right back they come out of the school environment, right back into the school environment at home with the same rules and the regulations.
When now they're on this 44, I wish this was back then, because I think if I had heard this raising my two sons back then, I don't think we would have that these situations that we face today, because our communication, at least with my oldest son, is hard, because it's like we bouncing off the wall, not knowing how to speak. And I know back then when I was when he was born, the things I had done to him affects our relationship now.
I'm going to teach you some skills, but I want to talk to y'all about youth communication. Talk about how parents negatively communicate and what we might see in youth communication we think is negative, but it's actually neutral. Eyes rolling, sighs, ignoring. When they're doing that, they're actually trying to do something called exertion of control. So they don't know how to control themselves. They don't know how to control what's happening in their environment. They have all this new stuff coming at them from school, friends, and all of these different people. And so if they can take control of a situation, they will. But they're going to take control of it with an attitude because they haven't been in the room to communicate properly. So when they're rolling their eyes, they're not trying to be disrespectful.
Okay, do y'all hear that in the
Rolling their
chat?
eyes because you don't listen to them.
You know, some parents gonna be really mad at you because they saying rolling your eyes at them and not.
Okay, so what you're doing is communicating back to your child the same way that they're communicating to you.
Right.
So complaining, arguing, talking back, yelling. Do you yell? Why would you expect an undeveloped person not to yell?
Wow.
So if you yell,
They
like
gonna-
you said, kids are sponges.
Yes, ma'am.
Whatever you do, they are going to do.
and they tell you
9 times out of 10.
They tell you.
They will tell you.
Don't be yelling at me. Well, you yelling at me.
Exactly. And then we say, well, that's being disrespectful. They're not being disrespectful. They're actually just telling you the truth. Listen. If you start to
Non-judgmentally.
see- non-judgmentally.
I had to throw that in there, didn't I?
Mhm.
Okay, don't be
I'ma
mad
give
at me,
you a
parents.
word in
I'm
a
just
minute.
saying, because you know we do that.
Now, these are some things that you might see from your child that you might have to start watching if their grades are dropping, if they're starting to misbehave in school or be defiant towards other adults. That means that they're actually unsure of how to control themselves and they want to ask for help, but they might be afraid.
Wow.
So they might not understand what's going on in class. So they start acting up in class so they won't have to do that work. They're scared to tell people that they don't know what's going
Yeah,
on.
sitting up here as a parent,
Okay.
I'm going, yeah, right, sure. Mhm.
Yeah. Well, it makes
See,
sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, but see, the parent and me going, sure. Yeah, that's just.
But we have to understand child
But
development.
that's how parents are. We so resistant. Let's say some parents are because we resisted to that change because we feel
that kids can control themselves.
right.
Let me tell you a little bit about development. Okay. So from 0 to 7, kids are sponges. They listen to every word that drops out of your mouth. They kind of worship you. They kind of want to know everything that you gonna say and do. So that's why you have to be very careful. If you curse, they gonna curse.
That's
If
true.
you snap back, they gonna snap back.
That's-
Because when they're really small, you're
Training them on the cool.
That's right.
I believe that because my
That's what they
grandbaby
do.
she wants to put all her lotions and her deodorant and all these things on. Why? Because she
Makeup.
see Granny do it. You
You
understand?
see the boys with
Mhm.
the tube belt on, and they're acting like superheroes or whatever they
Yes,
see dad
yes.
doing,
Oh
or
my
whatever.
God.
So that's called the imprint period. That's when you are actually imprinting on your child. You
My
know, they
God.
say animals do that. They imprint on a child. When you are imprinting on your child, you are putting on them you. So they at that age
Oh my
want
God.
to do everything you
Girl,
do.
stop. I don't want. Okay.
So when they get to that
can't
school age, 7, 8, 9, up to 13, that's called the modeling period. So now other people are modeling for them what is correct or incorrect behavior. Not just you, their pastors, their teachers, their daycare providers, their aunts and uncles, not their friends yet, but just other adults. So they're looking around and they're like, okay, mom yells all the time, but my teacher talks in a soft voice. I like Miss Joe. I like her because she talks to me in a different way. She listens to me, so they're learning now. Oh, there are other ways to communicate. Oh, there are other ways to do stuff. My daughter was religious for doing this. She had this favorite teacher when she was in second grade. And I'm an educator myself, right? And she would come home and I'm trying to help her with her work. And she would tell me, I can't even remember the teacher's name. Well, this is not how such and such does it. Everything I showed her was wrong. Everything the teacher showed her was right because my daughter was in that modeling period. I didn't understand that she had a different, if you want to say, role model. It's nothing wrong with that. Kids are supposed to learn from other environments. You just need to be careful what environment you put them in, because you do want them to look towards your pastors and their coaches in sports and different things like that, because they do need to learn from the world around them.
Right,
That
right.
helps them develop.
Yes,
That
yes.
helps them to develop. Then beyond 13, this is the social period. This is when
They
you're
start
no
smelling
longer
themselves.
imprinting on them, and their teachers and other adults are no longer imprinting on them.
In that age.
Their friends are imprinting
She
on
said
them.
13.
That 13-year-old is learning from other people that are just like them. And believe it or not, God built it that way. Your
So you trying to blame that on God? How they
This-
listening to them people?
Listen, God built the brain so that at 0 to 7, we listen to the person that's in front of us. But when we get 13, we start listening to the other person that's in front of us, which is another child, because one day I'm going to leave you. So I want to be like you naturally, because I'm wired to leave home.
Mm.
If I keep listening to you, I'm never going to leave.
Mhm.
So you, my peer, becomes my role model. We can't keep our kids from their peers. They are naturally attracted to them. God ordained to be attracted to someone
Genesis,
else
you're right.
that's just
I
like
just was
you.
thinking the scripture.
Genesis.
So listen, guys, when they are more attracted to their friends, instead of you trying to control their friendships, bring their friends over.
There you go. There you go.
Love
That's it.
on
That's
their
it.
friends.
Meet them right where they
Be
at.
with their friends. Make sure
Hey,
that you make
James.
friends with their friends' parents. Come
But that's
on,
what we, now,
guys.
but see, that's something we should do, period, anyway. 'Cause
Exactly.
we want to know, not to be so controlling over the kid, but we just need to know that
Our
period.
kid is safe.
You know.
So you keep your kids safe by figuring out what they like to do, where they want to go, where they want to hang out, and take them there.
Okay, so let me ask you. That goes back to what Casey was saying about the teachers back in the day. That's what we did. That's what our parents did when we were growing up. Well, bring her to the house. Let me
Right.
meet this friend that you running with.
Or you want to go over to somebody's house
Mhm.
overnight.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me go. Let me meet
But-
their
Yeah, let
parents.
me meet their parents. Let me see what they got going on.
But that's
Right.
what we used to do. and
Yeah,
that's-
but what do you think about in this day and time where all this
I think
stuff
sometimes
is going on
we,
now?
need
about
social
going people-
security,
Yeah,
social
yeah,
security,
but people-
ID,
Yeah, you know,
breaking
because
down
that's kind of
information.
fearful for some parents to allow their kids to go to other people's house because
But
they
that's
may
what
be
I
smoking
said.
weed.
But you
make
just
friends
something.
with their parents.
But you just said a good word, fear. Out
Yes,
of fear.
out of
we
fear.
just-
I don't want you to go to their house. They might smoke weed.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
their parents may be, you know, but I mean, I
But
have
guess
to
what your
allow them
kids gonna do anyway?
to go.
They gonna sneak. I had elementary school
Yeah, we did it.
students
I did it.
sneaking on the wrong bus to go to their friend's house.
I did
So
it.
if they can do that at 8 and 9, what makes you think they're not gonna do it when they're 13 and 14? So instead of you trying to control the situation, you move into the situation. You meet their friends. You meet their friends' parents. Y'all go out to dinner. You invite them over to
Okay,
dinner.
but I'm saying, what if they friends' parents smoke weed and do things that? Then how do you address
The
that?
thing is, you can't keep them away, but you can raise your kids in a way that they know how to say
Because
no.
we're so busy trying to protect our kids from everything, like when they fall down and scrape their knee, we'll get them up, oh, you poor baby, let me. But then next time they get on a pair of roller skates or something and they get ready to fall down, we're so busy trying to catch them before they fall. Then we mess them up because we always trying to get in there to catch them before they do something. That's not. And when they get ready to
Fear
go out
is
there,
not.
and that's what you were
You gotta
saying.
have faith with it.
My God.
You just have faith that
What
you
you
have
have
brought them
instilled
up
into
in
them.
the right way. Train a child in the way they're supposed to go,
Mhm.
and they will not stray from it. And if they do stray, they're gonna return.
Yes.
That's
So they might get off on the wrong path. They might start hanging around the
I
wrong
did.
kids. You know what I'm
But look
saying?
what
But you have
We
to
came
trust that what you've instilled instilled in them is going to come back to them. Look at the prodigal son. He came back.
I can relate to that. So let me come down from there. But I just wanted to speak further because I have to, and I say that to one of the sisters. Girl, let them kids go. Go let them ride the bus. Go let them learn some different
Right.
things. You are not going to be able to
Because
control
that time
how
when
they
it's-
move.
because they won't leave home, and parents say that about their children when they still at the house at 30 and something. Well, you cut their knees off from under them when you didn't allow them to do, or you
Learn how to
fear-
become independent.
Right.
That's
Oh
right.
my God,
Let me
guys.
talk about some tips on
We
how.
about to-
Okay, let me give y'all
Go ahead, give me
some
some.
quick communication techniques. Show empathy or care. That's a C. Care about your kids and how they feel. 2, collaborate. Give your child space to create boundaries themselves. You establish the boundaries when they're really young, but then help them to establish boundaries with you. Give them some control in the household. Also, make sure your expectations of them are clear. If your kid doesn't understand your expectations, or you have to re-establish your expectations or re-communicate your expectations, don't be afraid to do so. You are going to have to tell your kids how to do things again and again and again.
So Timothy, Paul told Timothy, I have to remind you. I have to remind you.
All right? Be calm. Make sure that you are regulated when you talk to your kids. If you are all over the place, you're upset about something, or something upsetting happened with your child, if you don't have a place of calm for them, then they're not going to open up to you. Also, have consent. Actually ask your kids, do they want to talk? Sometimes they don't feel like talking. So let them go away with themselves together and then say, you ready to talk now? Why shouldn't we ask our kids permission to talk?
Wow.
Yeah, that's something to put on the person's heart.
And actually consider, listen to your child's point of view. I guarantee over time they'll stop smacking their teeth and rolling their eyes and doing all that stuff that we see as negative communication because we're actually considering how they feel.
Mm.
Amen. Well, I want to tell you, thank you, Ms. Patrice. You've been amazing, explaining everything and giving us tools that we can use to have better communications and understanding what healthy communication with our child is and to teach our children healthy communications. I want to thank everybody for joining in. Hi, sisters. I want to give a shout out to Miss Debbie and all my restoration sisters, Jane, Melinda. Thank you guys for tuning in. If y'all enjoyed our podcast, hit that like button and subscribe. Am I doing it right?
That's right.
Yes, I'm doing it right.
You got it. You got it.
Amen. Hey. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. It was been awesome. You guys have a great rest of your weekend, and thank you so much. We'll see you the fourth Thursday, and it'll be up. I love you guys. Y'all be blessed. Hey.